Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. I hope that everyone had a happy holidays, whether you are celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus, or anything in between. I'm going to take a quick peel back from behind the curtain and let you guys know what exactly happened last week. So, if you're wondering why I had two RU-ins first and then this particular one, it's because on last Thursday I had recorded both RU-ins, and then that night I lost my voice. I actually am still recovering from that, but I've gotten most of my voice back, though like a couple years ago I had something similar where I lost my voice and lost a lot of my high range on my voice for a little bit. So I won't necessarily be singing for a while, at least for a little bit until I get that full range back. But I'm at least good enough so that I'm able to record this part of the discography review. And better news, I've already recorded the two RU-ins for this coming week. So the only other one I have to record is the last part of the Sticking Through Discography, which hopefully I'll get to on Saturday so I can put it up on Saturday. So the next 4 days you are going to have the last 4 videos of this year. So without further ado, well, let's start looking at the third part of discography review. Now, when we last talked, we were talking about Babel, my personal favorite album of theirs up to this point. I think it is just like with Hybrid Theory and Meteora, even though Sigh No More might be the better commercial successful album and has a lot more famous singles, Babel does what Sigh No More did better because they had more time to polish everything and they worked with the same producer, so they had more time to master their sound, and it definitely paid off. So after they dropped that album, they toured for the Babel CD. Unfortunately, after performing 2 shows on June 8th and June 9th in 2013 at the Austin 360 Amphitheater in Austin, bassist Ted Dwayne had checked into the hospital because he was not feeling well. Surgeons found a blood clot on the surface of his brain and performed surgery to remove it. Heeding medical advice to aid Dwayne's recovery, the band canceled the rest of the Summer Stampede tour, including performances at the 2013 Bonnaroo Music Festival, and returned to the UK. Dwayne's surgery was successful, and his recovery was such that the band was able to headline the 2013 Glastonbury Festival on June 30th. In September 2013, following the end of the world tour in support of their second album, Mumford Sons began what they thought would be a lengthy break, but found themselves back at work only 5 months later. After a couple of days in London at Dwayne's studio, the band headed back to Brooklyn to write demo tracks at the garage studio owned by the National's Aaron Dessner, where the band had spent time recording demos in months leading up to the end of the Babel tour. Lovett and Marshall were living in New York, with Mumford and Dwayne still based in England. So for the next 8 months, the band split their writing sessions between Dessner's New York garage studio and London's East Coast studio, where the debut album Sigh No More had been recorded. The band then recorded Wilder Mind at Air Studios in London with producer James Ford, who also traded off drumming duties with Mumford. The album was the first album where the band didn't work with Margaret Draves. They instead worked with James Ford and Aaron Dessner. So this is the first time where they changed producers. The album is also a departure from the group's folk rock sound, as they abandoned their signature acoustic instruments for electric ones and added a session drummer to fill out the rhythm section. So there were a few singles that were dropped for this album. The first one was Believe, and that was released on March 9, 2015. Second was The Wolf, which released on June 29, 2015. Titmus was the third single, released on September 11, 2015. Tompkins Square Park was the fourth single, released on November 2nd, 2015. Just Smoke was the fifth single, released on February 1st, 2016. And then there were a couple of promotional singles, Snake Eyes being debuted on April 20th, 2015, and Hot Gates on April 30th, 2015. The album was released on May 4th, 2015 through Gentlemen of the Road, Island, Glassnote, and Universal Music Group. So, all right, with this background, we're seeing that they have changed not only the producers, but also the sound of what they usually are. Gone are the folk instrumentation and arrangements and for more of a electronic rock, alt rock sound. They even add a drummer on there, which is something that we don't really hear from the first two albums. So with that in mind, let's dig into the CD. And honestly, that is the first thing that you feel from this album. Now, I reviewed this album a long time ago. It was one of my first RU-ins, and I am here to try to make up for some of the shortcomings that I had at the beginning, where I felt like I didn't give a lot of reasons, or not enough reason or background to what my thoughts were at the time. And even still, my thoughts on this album have changed over time. At first, I did not like the new sound. I was thinking that the songs were too subdued, there wasn't enough building on a lot of songs, and I missed the harmonies that were present on the other a lot of other albums. To me, it felt a complete 180. And now, I still do see flaws with this album, but I do appreciate it more. The reason for it is I think this album is a little bit more diverse in sound than some of their previous work. Starting off with the opener, Tompkins Square Park, you get the electronic idea that they're trying to go for in terms of the music. Gone are the acoustic guitars and substituted for electric. And I like the little guitar line at the beginning. It's not necessarily very complex, but it does the job to ring in that we're gone are the more rhythmic ideas with the guitar, and more now of a actual band or a actual rock band. You even get drums on here, which are fast paced but not too busy, which works really well with the kind of subdued sound that this song is getting at. And the nice thing is, as the song goes on, it layers more and more parts. You even get like a nice little cowbell part in the second verse. I think the melody itself is very beautiful. Mumford is singing in his lower register, and it sounds very nice. It's talking about this heartfelt message of meeting a lover one last time at Tompkins Square Park to relive the past glory that they've had, but know that this is the last time that they are doing so. I think a lot of the lyrics on here are very heartfelt, and the somber tone in general from the lyrics and also the lower register works very well with everything and meshes very well. There's some interesting harmonies on the chorus, and I just really like the chord progression in general. Nice way of opening up this album. And then you get Believe, which has the building of some of the other songs from the previous albums. I like that it comes to a head at the end, and it, starting very slow with a little bit of like electronic work, and it's very atmospheric at the beginning, and then eventually you get to the drums and the guitar parts. Eventually you get to this bridge part that amps up the energy on this song. I will say I wish that the bridge was a little bit longer, but that's my only complaint with this song. I love the build at the end. There's also, again, some good harmonies on this song, and I like how the end of Tompkins Square Park bleeds into Believe. I think that's very nice. Now, The Wolf, I have grown to like this song a lot more. When I first heard the teaser tracks for the album the first time, this was the first song that I heard, and it made me worried because it was a completely different style, and I didn't really pick up on that sound. But now as I listen to it more, it kind of feels a little bit like a Kings of Leon song, kind of something off of Mechanical Bull, but I enjoy it for the most part. And again, what draws me to it is the interesting arrangement and also the harmonies on there. I think there's some great harmonies, especially on the bridge itself. After that, we get to Wilder Mind. I think this is one of the first ones where I'm kind of just not interested in it, and it's actually in a row of songs that are not my favorite. Wilder Mind, Just Smoke, and Monster. I think out of the three, Just Smoke is the most interesting because I like the guitar work and the overlaying ideas on some of the interlude parts. And I just like the guitar lines in general in this very 6/8 song. The pre-chorus harmonies on that song in the second verse are interesting, and it builds very well. Wilder Mind is the next one on there. One of the more subdued songs on the album, and I think because of that, it just doesn't really build enough for me. It's not that it's bad, it's just, doesn't really do enough. And then Monster feels really weird out of these first 6 songs. It just has this very weird backbeat that doesn't fit what the previous songs were. It tries to feel a little bit more modern than some of the other songs, and to me, it just doesn't work. However, when we get to the latter half of the album, this is where some of it shines. First off, starting with Snake Eyes, this is one that builds fantastically. From the beginning all the way to the end, it just keeps building. First off, it builds with this very simplistic, plucked guitar line that's honestly beautiful. What I love about it is that the idea is elongated throughout the whole entire song. So it has, I believe, 6 measures for each idea, and that includes in the verse. Also, it kind of changes up on the chorus. I believe on the chorus there's only 3 measures to the idea each time. So they mess with the timing on here, and the chorus itself is one of my favorites on the album. This, it's in the eyes, I can tell you would always be danger. We had it tonight, why do you always fear absolution? It's beautiful, it's subdued, but what I love about it the most is that the drums keep building as the song goes on. The guitar parts get heavier until you get to the last part where the drums are literally pounding. It's a nice touch throughout the song. What I also love is that as the choruses go on, there is a very, very interesting harmony line that's added. I can't really sing it right now because I don't have my high part, but with the I can tell you would always be danger, it goes, I can tell you would always be danger. It's a really nice touch, and one of my favorite harmonies on the album. Such an awesome song to start the second half. Broad Shouldered Beast is also another one of my, it's not necessarily my favorites, but out of the lower end of these songs, it's one that sticks out. I love the 6/8 feel of it. I love the chord progression. It's so interesting, mixes through major and minor very well, and it's just a very beautiful song that gets the lyrics across of one person who's in a relationship and is getting just crushed by the world, and the other person's trying to help, even though this person is taking their anger out on them or their feeling of isolation. But the beginning of the second verse, which is these apartment walls are paper thin and no one's trying to listen in, it's talking about the fighting that's going on. Beautiful, beautiful song, followed by kind of like Tim Shell and Reminder, we get Cold Arms, the most simplistic song on the album and the shortest one on the album. I think this one, though, as these keep going, I think this is my favorite. I love the chord progression, and if you listen to it live, they have these harmonies on there which are beautiful. I wish that those were on the actual album, because I think they would have added so much more to this song. But I love the chorus of I know what's on your mind. God knows I put it there. And if I took it back, you'd be nowhere. You'd be nowhere again. I love those half-step approaches of mine. And then that back. It's beautiful. It's my favorite. It adds so much depth. Like usually when I hear these shorter songs, I usually have them as my not least favorite, but like the least impactful because of how short it is. But this is one of my favorites, and I honestly love it. Ditmas, next song on the album, kind of like with Snake Eyes and kind of like with a lot of songs that they've had, this song also plays with the length of the measures when it comes to the verses and their ideas. I believe again it adds 6 measures, and I think the same thing is with the chorus as well. It does add some more ideas. So even though a lot of these arrangements are a little bit more simplistic, they do change with the times as well. And I love the harmonies. Again, anytime they do harmonies on this album, I love all of it. I think this one has so much good energy, and again, another one that has a very nice melody to it. Only Love is unfortunately a very simplistic song, but again, another one of my favorites. This one builds very well like Lover's Eyes from the previous album. I think this kind of has that same idea where at the beginning it's very atmospheric, and again, one that has some of the best harmonies on the album, in that you saw me low, alone again. Didn't they say that only love will end in the end? And if you can imagine, it's 4-part harmony there. So, so nice. It does build into something that's kind of simplistic and just more rocky than anything else, with just very hard-hitting guitar and drums, but I love the build to it. Phenomenal song. However, this is where we get to me, the worst song in the album. Not lyrically, but musically, it's not very interesting. It's very much a lackluster ending when you compare it to everything else that has been on the album so far. The energy is not there, the melody isn't interesting, the drums aren't interesting either, and the chorus is kind of boring, especially the last part of it. However, it is an important message, and one that we'll get to in a minute. It's just, it doesn't work as an ender to me. So, most of the lyrics on this album talk about relationships and ending. Like we said, we talked about Tompkins Square Park, and most of them do talk about the key points of how and when a relationship fails. Whether it's Believe, where there's miscommunication between two people in a relationship, or a start of a relationship where somebody wants them to be with them, but they aren't really seeing their advantage. They don't see them that way, or they're maybe not interested in that way. Same thing with The Wolf. That's kind of like that same idea where it's one person looking to return the gaze of another. Wilder Mind and Just Smoke are both about relationships coming to an end. Monster is talking about a relationship that's kind of on the rocks because the person in the relationship is trying to make the other into someone that they are not, and thereby ruining what this relationship was. Snake Eyes is talking about a lover who keeps doing nefarious things, but keeps asking for forgiveness. We've already talked about Broad Shouldered Beast. Cold Arms is talking about a partner who messed up, making the other trust them less and grow more distant, even though that they stay. And it's a beautifully sad song, talking about like whether or not saying things will make it matter, but you know, even still, that even though you are in my cold arms at this moment, you do stay, which is that paradox about loving someone through thick and thin. Ditmas is a hypocritical song, if you will. It's talking about a relationship falling apart because one partner was using the other as a diversion, but then leaves because they say that this person that they're leaving had changed. So, and Only Love is talking about finding love in a person when they are at their worst. The only one that's a little bit different, but I think kind of ties everything together very well in terms of relationships and breaking up and the depression that comes with it and the feelings that we all have. This one is talking about helping someone stop their suicidal and depressive thoughts and being there for them even when they're staring at the literal gates of hell. A very open album, very introspective album, and I think for the most part the music works for it. At first I was very turned off because of the different sound, but now I've come to really, really like this album. There's only a handful of songs that I really don't like, and when it boils down to it, it's literally just Wilder Mind, Monster, and Hot Gates. I don't think any of them really add much to the album, especially because, you know, Wilder Mind has the same thematic ideas as some of these other songs. Monster you can keep for the lyrics, Hot Gates you can keep for the lyrics, but for the most part, I don't like listening to them. Every other song, though, I thoroughly enjoy listening to, singing the harmonies. And yeah, the music isn't as technical or as bombastic as their previous albums, nor does it have the instrumentation or the harmonies always that the previous albums do. But what I think this one does so well that Sigh No More didn't do well is there's a little bit more diversity in sound, where now that you have this more alt rock, electronic rock sound, that you can then do something like Hold Arms and it feels different comparatively to everything else that's happening. Whereas before, Tim Shell, even though it was nice, didn't necessarily work because some of the other songs felt a little bit the same. The electronic guitar lines work very well because it adds another layer that you didn't really hear on the previous songs on Sigh No More, where it was more of a rhythmical acoustic idea. And even though some of those songs are very memorable, I think I kind of enjoyed this album a little bit more. So in general, if you are worried about the electronic sound, I say still give it a chance. You might be turned off from the beginning, but if you can stomach it, I'd say this is a really cool album. I think there's a lot of really solid songs on here that build very well at parts. I will say some of them do get a little bit too subdued for my taste. Wilder Mind, Monster, and Hot Gates don't have that build that some of the other songs do, and because of that, they do stand out as bad songs or not interesting songs, but at the same time, they still stand out in a way where they have their own identity. And I think with on Sigh No More, when I had the songs that weren't as great, I think the problem was that they just didn't stand out in all because they are carbon copies of other songs on the album. So if you are looking for a different sound for Mumford Sons, give this one a chance. If you were kind of turned off by the first two, but like Kings of Leon and bands in that vein, give that a chance. I think you'll enjoy it. Does it necessarily make it stand out more than King of Leon? Maybe not. Maybe it's just my bias because I like Mumford & Sons, but I think this album does enough and has some interesting ideas, both rhythmically, both, with time signatures, with measure ideas, with chord progressions, that I think with harmonies that make it stand out with these other bands that are their brethren. And I have seen people who say like, oh, because they did this, that means that they're now sounding similar to everybody else rather than other people trying to copy them, they're copying others. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing because I think that they do enough differently. So yeah, give this a chance. And honestly, I've been racking my brain on this. I think it's so close. I think it's so close. I think that the singles, if you're talking about the best album for singles, I think Sigh No More is even better than Babel when it comes to singles. Barely, because I think Little Lion Man is fantastic. I think The Cave is fantastic. I think Winter Winds is great as well. I think all three of them stand out when it comes to the discography. And when you talk to people, I think those are some of the first songs that you think of when you think Mumford & Sons. However, I think on an overall album level, I think this one is just a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more cohesive. I think it's a little bit more diverse. I think even though there are some missteps, they at least stand out in their diversity. And I think the lyrics are some of the best that they've had. I think I'm fine with the allegories, I'm fine with the references, but this one doesn't tackle as much religious ideology on this album, or doesn't speak in those religious ideologies as much, and is a little bit more, you're more able to understand some of the stuff that is going on. Like this, you feel a connection to some of these lyrics a little bit more than the lyrics on Sigh No More. And I think you connect to the music a little bit more than the one on Sigh No More. And again, I'm not saying that just because I like this one a little bit better, that Sigh No More is not great. It's a fantastic album as well. But I think it was the first album, and because of that, a lot of the stuff sounds very similar. So, by the thinnest of margins, and I might even change this next week, I have number 3, Sigh No More, number 2, Wilder Mind, number 1, Babel. Just to round this out real quick, Wild Mind debuted at number 1 on the UK Albums Chart, making the band's second number 1 album in the United Kingdom. It sold 81,300 copies in the first week of release to become the second fastest selling album in 2015. The following week saw the album spend a second consecutive week at number 1 in the UK and become the first album to do so in 2015. In the United States, the album became the band's second number 1 on the Billboard 200, debuting at number 1 with sales of 231,000 copies, or 249,000 units, including track sales and streams. The band marked the largest debut for a rock album in 2015 and the third biggest opening overall of the year. The album has sold 568,000 copies in the US as of May 2016, so it hasn't done as well sales-wise, but if you're looking for a very, very solid rock album, there's worse that you can do. I enjoy it. I'm glad I'm able to take the time to redo this album review now that I have more thoughts on it and have diversified more of my sound and been doing more of these. And if you've been here with me since the beginning, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Of course, if you do like this album, give this video a like. Let me know what you love or hate about the album, or thoughts that you have on it in general, or other bands that I can do discography reviews on. And most importantly, if you like what I'm doing and love these little discography reviews, please go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't already. That means that you do care about what I'm doing and that you want to see more of this and that you are willing to see more of this. So thank you so much. I have 3 more videos to do for 2018, 2 instrumental albums, and 1 more digging through discography, where we will next time talk about their most recent album, Delta. But until then, this is the Music Fan signing off.